Let me tell you about something I saw. Something I still think about when I can't sleep. It was a Tuesday, not a special Tuesday. No state visit, no royal birthdays, just a gray, spitting kind of London afternoon in late October. The kind where the air smells like wet leaves and exhaust fumes, and tourists huddle under cheap umbrellas that keep turning inside out. I was near the gates of Buckingham Palace. Not the main forecourt where the big ceremonies happen, but the stretch of pavement along the mall where the smaller guard post sits. The one with the little box. You've seen the photos. A single soldier, standing like a statue, while the whole world walks past him. There was the usual crowd. A family from Ohio, dad wearing a backpack like a turtle shell. A group of German teenagers taking selfies, their laughter sharp in the damp air. Two older women with matching red raincoats, pointing at the gold on the gates. And me, I just finished a meeting nearby and decided to take the long way to the tube. I'd seen the guards before, of course. We all have. You watch them for 10 seconds, think that's dedication, then get bored and check your phone. They blur into the background. Part of the furniture. A tourist attraction with a gun. But this one was different. His name doesn't matter. To us, he was just the guard. A young man, maybe early 20s. You couldn't see much of his face, hidden under that enormous black bearskin hat that adds a foot to his height. The famous red tunic. The polished boots. The white belt pulled tight. He stood on the public pavement, not in a sentry box, just a chalk mark on the ground he wasn't allowed to leave. I was leaning against a lamppost, waiting for the rain to ease up when I first noticed him. It was his eyes. They weren't looking straight ahead like they usually do. They were focused. Too focused. The way a cat watches a bird it knows it can't catch. There was a tightness around his jaw I hadn't seen before. His gloved hands, resting on the rifle, weren't relaxed. The knuckles were white. The crowd didn't see it. A little boy in a Spider-Man raincoat ran too close to him. The mother yanked him back, apologizing to the guard as if he were a piece of china. The guard didn't move. Not a blink. Not a flinch. But I saw the muscle in his neck twitch. Something was wrong. I couldn't say what. No alarmbells. No shouting. Just a feeling. The way you know someone is holding their breath underwater for too long. I started watching him properly. Not the casual glance. A real watch. The rain was getting heavier. Little needles of it. Most people had retreated to the covered area near the gift shop. But the guard stood in the open. Rain ran down the shiny brim of his hat and dripped onto his shoulders. He didn't shake it off. He didn't shift his weight. His posture was perfect. Spine straight, chin level, feet at that specific angle they train into you until it becomes pain. But his eyes were screaming. I took a step closer. Not too close. The line on the ground was there for a reason. I pretended to look at the palace, but I watched him in my peripheral vision. And that's when I saw the first tiny crack. His left nostril flared. Just once. A sharp inhale, like a swimmer coming up for air. Then his lips pressed together so hard they went white. He swallowed. I saw his Adam's apple move slowly, painfully, like he was trying to force down a stone. He was fighting something. On the inside, the German teenagers were taking turns posing next to him, their backs to his chest, peace signs up. One of them bumped his elbow. Just a graze. The guard didn't react, but I saw his fingers tighten on the rifle for a fraction of a second. A death grip. Then relax. The dad from Ohio was now explaining to his son that the guard was just a robot buddy. He can't feel anything. The son believed him. Most people believe it. That's the whole point of a uniform. It's armor, not just against bullets, against humanity. But I was close enough now to see the sweat on his temple. In October, in the rain, his face was pale. Not pale like a Scottish tourist. Pale like hospital sheets. There was a gray tint under his eyes that makeup couldn't hide. And he was blinking. Too often. Each blink a little slower to open than the last. That's when I knew. He wasn't just tired. He was dying on his feet. Not literally dying. Probably. But something was very, very wrong inside him. A fever? Dehydration? He'd been standing there when I arrived, and that was 40 minutes ago. He could have been there for 2 hours. 3. They do 2 hours on, for off, usually. But sometimes if someone calls in sick, if there's a shortage, that he get extended. I looked around for an officer. anyone in a different uniform. There was no one, just the crowd, the rain, and this young man who had become a statue of misery. A woman in a business suit walked past and dropped a coin near his feet. She didn't even look at him. The coin landed on the wet ground with a soft clink. He didn't look down. He couldn't. But I saw his right knee tremble. Just a tiny shake. The kind your leg does when you've been standing too long on a train. He locked it straight again. Hard. Too hard. I almost felt the jarring pain in my own bones. He was holding himself together with nothing but willpower. And the uniform wouldn't let him fall. I pulled out my phone. Not to film. I don't film people in pain. I texted my wife. Something weird at the palace. A guard looks really sick. She texted back a gif of a penguin. She thought I was exaggerating. I wasn't. The rain stopped. Suddenly, like someone turned off a tap. The clouds didn't clear, but the water just stopped. And in the silence that followed, I heard it. A low, barely audible hum, coming from the guard. At first, I thought he was singing. They don't sing. They don't do anything. Then I realized he was breathing, but it was a controlled, mechanical kind of breathing. In for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds. A technique to stop yourself from vomiting or passing out. I'd done that breathing once on a boat in rough seas. It doesn't really work. It just gives you something to focus on while your body betrays you. His eyelids were getting heavy, drooping, like a child fighting sleep at the dinner table. Then he'd snap them open again. Wide. Too wide. The whites showing all around. A rabbit in headlights. And that's when the first wave hit him. I saw it happen. There was no warning. 1 second he was standing there, breathing like a faulty engine. The next, his entire body went rigid. Not the normal rigid of standing at attention. This was different. This was every muscle locking at once, like a seizure standing up. His back arched an inch. His head tilted back just slightly, the bearskin hat pointing at the gray sky. His face turned the color of old cheese. He was going to faint. I knew it. Anyone who's ever seen someone go down knows the signs. The color drain. The sudden stillness. The eyes losing focus. He was going to hit the ground. Hard. On the public pavement. In front of 200 tourists with phones. And he knew it too. I saw it in his eyes. A flash of pure terror. Not fear of death. Fear of failure. Fear of shame. Fear of becoming a viral video titled Royal Guard Collapses LOL. He closed his eyes. For 2 seconds. 3. 4. The crowd kept walking. A bus splashed through a puddle. A seagull screamed overhead. The world did not stop. And then he opened his eyes, and he was still standing. Part 2, The Hollow Man. I don't know how to explain what happened next. Because nothing happened, and everything happened. He didn't fall. His knees didn't buckle. His back didn't slump. From 10 feet away, to a casual observer, he was exactly the same as he'd been for the last hour. A perfect, immovable symbol of British discipline. But I was 10 feet away, and I saw the truth. He had fainted. Inside, his consciousness had flickered off like a candle in a draft. For those 4 seconds with his eyes closed, he was gone. Not asleep, not resting. Gone. The lights were off. The pilot had ejected. But his body had stayed. How is that even possible? I've thought about it 100 times since. The training, the repetition, the absolute, bone-deep conditioning. They don't just teach these men to stand still. They rewire them. They turn posture into instinct, and instinct into something deeper than thought. He hadn't chosen to stay upright. His body had done it without him. When he opened his eyes again, they were different. Not scared anymore. Empty, like a doll's eyes. He was looking at the palace gates, but he wasn't seeing them. He was seeing the inside of his own skull. He was running on fumes and muscle memory. And then he swallowed again. But this time I heard it. A dry, clicking sound, like 2 pieces of sandpaper rubbing together. He hadn't had water in hours. Maybe all day. I looked at his hands again. The white gloves were no longer white. They were gray with sweat. There was a dark patch spreading under his arm, visible even against the red tunic. And his breathing had changed. It was no longer the slow, controlled rhythm. It was shallow, fussed, panting, but only just. He was in full crisis, and no one else could see it. A young couple walked right in front of him, arms around each other. The girl said, "He's so still, it's creepy." The boy said, probably hung over. They laughed. They took a photo. They walked away. I wanted to shout at them. I wanted to say, "Can't you see he's dying on his feet? Can't you see the human being under the hat?" But I didn't, because I knew what they'd see. A man doing his job. A man who signed up for this. And that's the cruelest part. He did sign up for this. He wanted this. The bearskin, the tunic, the standing in the rain while tourists treat you like a piece of street furniture. He probably dreamed of it as a kid. And now he was living it, and it was killing him, and he couldn't move a single finger to save himself. The two women in red raincoats were now standing next to me. They were watching him too, but differently. One of them, the shorter one with silver hair, leaned over and whispered to her friend. "He's not well," she said. Her friend shook her head. "They're always like that, stiff as boards." "No," the first woman insisted. "Look at his neck." I looked. She was right. His neck, usually hidden by the collar of the tunic, was exposed just slightly where his head had tilted. There were veins standing out, thick purple ropes of them, and his skin was the color of candle wax. The woman took a step toward him, not on his patch, but close. She raised her hand just a little, like she was going to ask if he was okay. And then something happened that I will never forget. The guard looked at her. Not a glance, not a flicker, a full, deliberate turn of his head. Just an inch, just enough that his eyes, those empty doll's eyes, met hers. And he shook his head. "No, don't." It was the tiniest movement, a millimeter of denial. Most people would have missed it, but the woman in the red raincoat saw it. Her hand dropped. Her mouth opened, then closed. She stepped back. She understood. He wasn't asking for help. He was refusing it, because accepting help would mean admitting failure. And failure was worse than fainting, worse than collapsing, worse than any physical pain. He would rather die on that pavement than be rescued from it. That's when I realized how alone he was. Not physically. There were hundreds of people around him, but no one could touch him. No one could speak to him. No one could put a hand on his shoulder and say, "Mate, sit down, you've done enough." The uniform forbade it. The rules forbade it. And you would have rejected it anyway. The silver-haired woman didn't leave. She stood next to me, arms crossed, watching. She had tears in her eyes. I didn't, but I understood them. 5 more minutes passed. Then 10. The crowd thinned out as a light drizzle started again. The German teenagers left. The Ohio family left. The 2 women stayed. I stayed. The guard was now swaying. Not visibly, not to a casual eye. But if you stared at his shoulders, if you really focused, you could see a microscopic tremor. A constant, tiny oscillation like a tuning fork that had been struck and would not stop. He was holding himself up by locking his joints. His knees were hyperextended. His lower back was arched wrong. His neck was strained. Every part of his body was screaming at him to sit down, lie down, just let go. And he wouldn't. I checked the time on my phone. 3:47 p.m. The changing of the guard happened at 11 a.m. He'd been here for almost 5 hours. 5 hours. No water. No food. No seating. No leaning. No talking. No expression. No humanity. And he had at least another hour to go. A police officer walked by. A tall woman with a high-vis vest. She glanced at the guard, then at the crowd, then kept walking. She saw nothing wrong. Or she chose to see nothing wrong. I don't know which is worse. The drizzle turned into proper rain again. Fat, heavy drops that hit the pavement with audible splats. The guard's bearskin hat soaked it up like a sponge. It must have weighed 10 pounds by now. Water ran down his face, into his collar, down his back. He didn't blink it away. His eyes were half closed now, not from tiredness, from something else, a kind of retreat, like a turtle pulling its head into its shell. He was going somewhere else, somewhere inside himself where the rain couldn't reach and the pain couldn't follow. And that's when the second wave hit. I saw his whole body go slack for half a second. Just a drop, a loss of tension. His shoulders rounded forward. His chin dropped to his chest. His knees bent. He was falling. I took a step forward. The woman in the red raincoat gasped. And then, like a puppet jerked by invisible strings, he snapped back into position. Straight. Tall. Perfect. His eyes open wide. Too wide. There was something new in them now. Not terror. Not emptiness. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage directed entirely at himself. He was furious at his own body for betraying him. Furious at the weakness that had made his knees bend. His jaw tightened so hard I thought I heard his teeth crack. He was not going to fall. Not today. Not ever. He would stand here until he turned to stone. He would stand here until they carried him away in a box. He would not break. The silver-haired woman was crying now. Quietly, she wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "That's not dedication," she said to me. Her voice was hoarse. "That's cruelty." I didn't answer, because I didn't know if she was talking about the army, or the tourists, or the man himself. Maybe all three. Part 3: The Standing Man, 4:22 p.m. The rain stopped for the third time. The clouds broke apart just enough for a single shaft of weak, yellow sunlight to fall across the pavement. It hit the guard square in the face. He didn't flinch. His eyes were open, but they weren't seeing. They were fixed on a point about 1,000 yards away, somewhere beyond the palace, beyond London, beyond everything. He had left his body. He was just a coat rack holding up a uniform. And then, from around the corner, I heard them. Boots. Many boots. Rhythmic. Synchronized. The unmistakable sound of a relief guard approaching. The silver-haired woman grabbed my arm. "They're coming," she whispered. "Oh, thank God. They're coming." The new guard turned the corner. For soldiers, led by a corporal, marching in perfect step. They were crisp, clean, fresh. Their bearskins were dry. Their faces were rested. They had no idea what they were about to see. The crowd, what was left of it, parted for them. People raised their phones. The moment of theater had arrived. The changing of the guard. The ritual. The show. But I wasn't watching the new soldiers. I was watching the old one. The moment he heard those boots, something shifted in him. A spark. A final, desperate surge of energy from some hidden reserve. His back straightened an extra inch. His chin lifted. His eyes, those dead, empty eyes, suddenly focused. They sharpened. They became the eyes of soldier again. He was not going to be seen as broken. Not by his replacements. Not by the corporal. Not by anyone. The relief guard halted 10 feet away. The corporal barked an order. The old guard was supposed to remain still while the new guard took position. That was the protocol. But I saw his right hand twitch. Just once. A tiny, involuntary spasm. He was counting the seconds, willing himself to last just a little longer. The new guard stepped into position. The corporal gave the command to present arms. The old guard raised his rifle. His arms were shaking. Not visibly, but I could see the barrel trembling. A microscopic vibration that no one else would notice. He held it steady. The corporal inspected him, walked around him, looked at his boots, his belt, his buttons. The old guard stared straight ahead. His face was gray. His lips were blue. Sweat was running down his neck in rivulets. The corporal paused in front of him. For a moment, just a moment, I thought he saw it. He leaned in close, looked at the guard's eyes, and then he stepped back, saluted, and gave the order to dismiss. It was over. The old guard took one step forward, then another. He was supposed to march away with the relief back to the barracks. But his first step was wrong. Too stiff. Too slow. He was walking like a man made of glass, afraid to shatter. The silver-haired woman was crying openly now. Her friend had her arm around her. "Look at him," she said. "Look at how he walks." He was shuffling, not marching. His boots scraped the ground. His left leg dragged just a little. The fresh soldiers behind him had to slow down to match his pace. And then, 10 yards from the post, he stopped. The corporal behind him said something. A quiet word. I couldn't hear it, but I saw the old guard's shoulders rise and fall once. A deep breath. The first real breath he'd taken in hours. And then he kept walking. He disappeared around the corner, behind the gate, into the hidden world where guards go when the tourists aren't watching. The crowd dispersed. The new guard stood in the old one's place, fresh and immaculate. People started taking photos again. The show went on. The silver-haired woman looked at me. Her face was red and wet. "Do you think he'll be okay?" she asked. I thought about it. About the empty eyes, the trembling knees, the way he had died on his feet for 5 hours and asked for nothing. Not a glass of water, not a chair, not a single moment of grace. "I don't know," I said. "I don't know if any of them are." She nodded slowly. Then she turned and walked away, her red raincoat disappearing into the gray afternoon. I stayed for a while longer. Watched the new guard. He was perfect, straight, still, unmoving. The crowd loved him. They took their selfies, made their jokes, dropped their coins. And I thought about the man who had stood there an hour ago. The man who had fainted inside, but remained standing outside. The man who had fought his own body and won, but at what cost? I thought about what the woman had said. That's not dedication. That's cruelty. Maybe she was right. Maybe we ask too much of young men in fancy hats. Maybe the symbol is not worth the human. But then I thought about his eyes in that final moment. With a relief, guard arrived. When he straightened his back and lifted his chin. When he refused, absolutely refused, to be seen as weak. There was pride in those eyes. Not the loud, boastful kind. The quiet kind. The kind that says, I did what I said I would do. I stood where I was told to stand. I did not fall. And I don't know if that's cruelty or courage. Maybe they're the same thing, dressed in different uniforms. I walked to the tube station. The rain started again. I didn't put up my umbrella. I just kept thinking about the standing man. And how sometimes the hardest battles are the ones no one sees. The ones fought in silence, in stillness, in the space between a heartbeat and a faint. The ones where the only witness is a stranger with nowhere to go and too much time to watch. I never saw him again. I don't know his name. I don't know if he's still a guard, or if he left, or if he collapsed the moment he got inside. I don't know if anyone ever asked him if he was okay. But I know this. The next time I see a royal guard, I won't take a photo. I won't make a joke. I'll just stand there for a moment and wonder what's happening behind a mask. Because now I know. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is stay on their feet, even when everything inside them has already fallen.